Hi, this is Alan with Made by a Bee. We're going to answer some questions that y'all have submitted from the past week.
Okay, the first question that was asked is, what are some of the benefits of being in a bee club and how can you get plugged in?
Well, some of the benefits is your bee club is a great way to get new education and current educational information on how to take care of bees. Typically we'll have speakers or somebody will come in here and tell you about a problem or how to address a problem. Also, it allows you to ask questions to your fellow beekeepers within the club. Hey, I'm having this problem. Is anybody else having this problem? What are you doing to solve this problem? Another thing for us in our club is that we always have club members either being transferred or retiring, or they're having to move someplace where they can't have bees any longer, or they're just getting out of it. So they want their bees to go to a good home, and oftentimes you'll be able to get a great deal on bee equipment with bees in it already. And for us, one of the unique things about our Lake County Bee Club is that we have club hives, and club hives allows us to do a day in the bee yard, which allows us to teach techniques to new beekeepers or longtime beekeepers, something that's new that may be better than the old way. And so that when you go and do your bees in your hive, you're more proficient at it. You're able to use a technique. Maybe we'll teach you how to use a tool or a certain procedure so that when you get into your hive, you're not killing your bees or being as destructive within your own hive. And so how do you hook up with a bee club or whatever? What we recommend is, because there is so much information on the internet, I recommend you call your local ag extension office. Every county has one, and you ask who they work with, and they will be able to give you the bee club in your area that they're working with, that they meet. Ours meets once a month, and it's a great way to get information out to the new beekeeper.
Okay, our next question that was asked was, what types of bees are in a hive and what jobs might they have?
That's a great question. And so what I'm doing is using a visual aid so you can see this. As you can see right here, we have three different types. We have a queen, a worker, and a drone. There's one queen in the hive, typically, and she does all the egg laying in the hive. So ultimately, when she takes over, after about 30 days or so, all the bees that are in there are her daughters or sons, if there's some drones in there also. And she also emits pheromones that give a calming effect in there and lets the hive know that it's queen right, and it gives an overall well-being of the hive. We can sense, or they can sense when there's a queen. They can smell it. And when we go into a hive, you can oftentimes tell by the buzzing sound if the hive is queen right. The next one we're going to talk about is a drone. A drone is the male bee, and its only function and purpose there is for reproduction. And so they will mate with the virgin queen that comes out either in spring or fall, which is typically when they do swarms and requeening. And they will mate with the queen, and then after mating they die. But in the times of year, typically in the wintertime in particular, because they don't gather, they don't protect, they don't even have a stinger, so you can't even be stung by a drone bee, the hive will throw all the drones out, and they either starve to death, freeze to death, or become food for something else. And so then the drones are out, which leaves typically the worker, which is about 99% of the force in the house. They go and gather, and then we go into the beautiful thing about a bee colony, in that it's different from ant colonies and termite colonies. As the bee ages, its work or jobs that it performs progresses, so that when a bee is born, or an ant is born, it's born a guard ant. It always is a guard ant for the rest of its life. But a bee takes on different jobs as it ages. So the first job the bee does is become a cleaner bee. Cleaner bee goes there, cleans up its cell, gets it ready, takes out the trash, does those kind of things, so that when the queen comes back around, she can go ahead and lay in that cell and the process starts all over again. Then they become nurse bees. And the nurse bees will feed the larva in there. And as they get better at it, the new nurse bees feed the larger larva. And then as they get better at it, they feed the younger larva, because it takes a little bit more care, because these have to be fed about every 30 minutes. And so you can't put too much of the nectar or the bee bread that goes in there, because if they put too much in it, then that one would drown. Next is this bee here is I call it the handyman of the hive, or the handy woman. And she does the repairing. She makes sure that everything is in its appropriate places. She fixes whatever needs to be fixed. She also makes sure that there's appropriate food in places on the frames, so that the nurse bees don't have to go looking for food to mix up. They'll move pollen and they'll move honey into the right places. After that, become a guard bee. The guard bee will be in and around the entrance area and will smell and touch bees coming and going, making sure that the pheromones that they have are from this house. And so you're from this house and you can come and go. But they also will make sure that robbing bees or other predators that are trying to come in can't come in, and they will defend the hive with their life. After the guard bee becomes a foraging bee, which is what typically most people see. That's the bee out in the flowers gathering the pollen or the nectar. As you can see here, the little pollen sacs that they have on there. And they represent roughly about 1/3 of the entire hive. When you're looking at a hive in there, there's a lot of workforce for going and gathering. And if they're lucky enough to live long enough, they become what I call the senior citizen bee, which is the scout bee. And those are the bees that go out and look for new nectar or pollen sources for the hive, and will come back and communicate that to the rest of the hive with the bee dance.
Our next question that was asked was, how many pounds of honey can one bee make?
Well, that's a good question, but it's not likely to be pounds of honey. So to give you an idea of how much honey a bee can make, one of the questions, if you come to my talks that we do, is how many bee flights does it take to make 1 teaspoon of honey? And to give you the answer to that, it's about 60,000 flights to make 1 teaspoon. So what ends up happening, that means that a bee has to fly out, gather nectar, come back, dry it down, and they pass it along, and they put it into the comb, and 60,000 flights is equivalent. But the thing is that there are so many bees in here. We run typically 40 to 60,000 bees in our hive. And so each one of those going out with the workforce has the ability to go out and gather and make honey relatively easily. To give you an idea, in our hive here, this box, when we take it off, can typically have about 2 gallons or about 24 pounds of honey in that box. And we'll have anywhere from 2 to 3 of these on top of a hive. And so that makes roughly 6 gallons a hive on a flow. And we can have about 4 or 5 flows a year. So the quantity of honey can be made, but it's not based upon one bee, but upon the colony, the number of bees that are in the hive that will generate, and the area that you're in, of how rich the resources are in there.
Okay, our final question is, are there different breeds of bees? And if so, how do you know what they are?
We're going to be talking about Apis mellifera, which is the honeybee. And there's other kinds of bees that can be talked about, but Apis mellifera is a honey-bearing bee. And as you can see on this chart that's been provided by Eversweet Apiaries, it's a great visual for you to see as a beekeeper of what type of queen you would like to select for. And then ultimately her genes are passed down through her daughters, and that gives you a temperament of that hive. And as you can see on the chart, the traits that we have the ability to select from. calm comb, defensive behavior, early buildup, honey collection, storage, propolis collection, tendency to swarm trichomite, resistance varroa mite, and winter's well. You can develop, as we do at Made by a Bee, a protocol for what we're looking for in a queen. And the queen that we run is an Italian queen. And you can see the pluses and minuses for each one of those. You may want something else, but in selecting the type of queen, this gives you a good direction for how your hives will behave and act. This by no means is an exhaustive chart on it, but this gives you an idea of how we're able to track and manage and look for tendencies of hive behavior with different types of races of bees.